At some level of consciousness, I always know I'm part of the colonization and the invasion and the oppression, but that I keep that out of sight and out of mind.
You cannot not be racist. It's in our water. It's in the air that we breathe. It's the world that we were born into. It's the world that we were born into.
My mental picture of a racist is this big white guy, you know, saying all this stuff and being mean and making slanderous remarks and blah, 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 blah. And I'm saying, well, that's not me. That's not me. Where does racism show up for me? I know it's in there. Where is it? And it scares the hell out of me. Who am I hurting? What am I doing?
I think a lot of times we don't know what we're saying. And by we, I do mean white people. I mean, I've thought about like talk shows and stuff and listening to people of color all pissed off and, you know, you're just ignorant. And I would think, well, I'm in the clear there because I know I'm not a racist, I'm not ignorant. Well, I'm really ignorant. So I sort of felt down about that, and then I got really excited because what that means is all the stuff you don't know, then that means there's all that stuff you get to learn.
My people are from Eastern Europe, from Poland and Russia.
Austria.
Poland. Baghdad.
Russia.
Spain, and then Turkey.
Raised in Israel. My family has lived in Iraq for 3,000 years, and I'm actually mixed heritage. My mom has been identifying as an Iraqi Jew for the past 34 years, but grew up as a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant whose family came over on the Mayflower. And we don't have any African Jews with us. We don't have Ethiopian Jews with us. And that's a very important piece that we're missing. The Mizrahim are indigenous to the Middle East and North Africa. They were in ancient Israel, they were in Egypt as slaves, they went back to ancient Israel, they got exiled into Babylon. Many stayed in Babylon, and then others from there spread throughout the Middle East and North Africa, so they've never left the region. The term Sephardi means Jews who were in Spain during the Moorish period. They were exiled in 1492 with the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition. They settled throughout the Ottoman Empire, which today encompasses countries such as Greece, Turkey, also Middle Eastern, North African countries such as Egypt and Morocco.
Ashkenazi Jews are Jews who were exiled to Europe and have moved, I think, through different periods in history to different parts of Europe. Russia, Poland, there's German, and then Anglo-Saxons also.
For the Ashkenazim, for matters of survival in many, many periods, like to not be killed, and then later when periods were good, for the matters of status, the goal was to be as white, as European, as non-Semitic as possible. I feel that it leads to a crisis in Jewish identity that is not discussed, namely that like desperation to oppress, to squash, to detach from anything Mizrahi or Sephardi comes from an oppression that, you know, a few hundred years before, they were the same skin color as we were.
They call us shorim, which means black. All of you black are from the same. We don't care, Morocco, Iraq.
The Ashkenazis say that.
Yeah. The humiliation, I guess, or something about, you know, where you come from and what are you eating, or you're primitive. And yeah, it was just the way that the teacher treated us. It was in the air, and the buses would go.
I remember one woman who came to my mother's door. I was home, I was about 15. And there was a mezuzah on the door. My mother opens the door. First thing the woman says to my mother is, "Why do you have a mezuzah on your door?" And my mother says, "We're Jewish." And the woman says, "What kind of Jew are you?" And my mother said, "Sephardic." And the woman said, "Oh, well, you're not a real Jew." And the next time this woman called, my mother said, "I'm sorry, I'm going out of business." And that's how she would get rid of customers she didn't like, because she wasn't confrontational, and she wouldn't say, "You know, you really are a stupid bitch, get out of here."
The mountain of lies that grow from the initial story. They made love, wild and abandoned love, and I was the product of that.
This one kid just screamed out, you know, Rose isn't your mama, your mama's white.
My black father had been a secret from me as I had been a secret from him.
My mother told me that her mother and father and her 8 brothers and sisters were in a car accident, and their car got hit by a train. And they all died.
I think I always suspected there was something different, but I didn't know what.
So she taught me 2 things. One is not to talk about death, and the other was not to talk about her family.
I was given to my father's parents when I was 2 days old and grew up believing that my African-American grandparents were my parents.
And my mother did decide to keep me and care for me, and with that decision I became, you know, cut off from my black family then for 12 years.
One of my most vivid memories of my father is him stealing me in the middle of the night, but my mother catching him and the police taking me out of the car. And then I spent the next maybe 5 years with my mom, who says things like racism doesn't exist anymore. She, as a single parent, had a hard time, you know, with 2 kids, and so she gave us to a foster family, to a Jehovah's Witness family. They came knocking on the door and were doing their preaching, and they were willing to take my sister and I on.
At age 14, I came to meet my mother and then eventually live with her, and I was thrown into white culture. I found myself just like being enraged and hating my white grandparents when I would go visit them, and they wouldn't introduce me to their friends. Their friends would walk up and they'd be very hurried, you know, and I just thought, I hate these white people. I hate them, you know, and why weren't they willing? And the only way I can describe it is to take the risk to be uncomfortable. I felt like there was this real secretive part of me that wanted to be with white people so that I could just dig at them all the time, just poke at them, and just shove my blackness in their face and shove my pain in their face.
Yes, we are not invisible. No, I'm not from Tokyo, Singapore, or Saigon. No, your dogs are safe with me. No, I don't invade the park for squirrel meat. No, I'm very bad at math. No, I do not answer to Geisha Girl, China Doll, Susie Wong, Mama-san, or Gook, Jap, Chink.
In terms of nationality, I'm an American. In terms of racial or ethnicity, I'm Filipino.
I was born in Canton, China. I came to the U.S. in 1987.
Born and raised in Sri Lanka. I've been in San Francisco since 1983.
My mother is from Japan, and my father's from Mississippi.
Born in India. I've lived in Kuwait and in London and in Washington, D.C.
I'm Chinese Indonesian. I was born in Queens, New York.
I was born in San Francisco, and I'm Indian.
Both of my parents who raised me are Chinese, so I always say that I'm Chinese, and then I say I'm from Vietnam. It's very hard for me to accept myself as Vietnamese because within the Asian culture, especially in Vietnam, Chinese and Vietnamese had like a big internal classism, you know, racism.
If I must identify, I would say...
Do.
If I'm forced to, I would say I'm Asian and American. Not Asian American, Asian and. Yes, I'm a woman of color. Yes, I'm bisexual. Yes, I'm an immigrant woman. That's very important to me, that I'm an immigrant woman. I continue to call myself an immigrant woman because I think we are almost blocked into some group of monolingual people who only, you know, take